All right. And we're back for another episode of The Blockument. Hey, everybody. How you doing today?
Hello.
Hello, hello. Welcome. This is where we do crypto education through everyday conversations. My name is Nate Talbot. I'm the executive director of the Detroit Blockchain Center. Just wanted to do a quick note. Today's episode is pre-recorded and not live, so you cannot call in.
Don't call
But I'm here today with my co-host,
Ashlee Rose. I'm just your everyday gal. I am a mother and a reseller, and I'm here on this journey to learn what is all of this crypto, Bitcoin stuff all about.
Yep. And we're joined today. We have a special guest in the house. DJ Skeez, my homegirl. How you doing?
Me. Nice to meet you all. I am DJ Skeez. I'm not your average, ordinary girl. I would never say that about you either. We are extraordinary women who learn about things as we go about this world, right? And so crypto has been something that I've been learning about over the last 5-6 years, and we met probably 3-4 years ago at least, at a Bitcoin birthday, and this is kind of my world now. Well, one of my worlds.
Yes, one of your many
me.
worlds. Thank you. And we got Skeez on here today. We're talking about what even is the Metaverse. I know a lot of people have heard the term before, Metaverse. It really got popular when a certain Mr. Zuckerberg started throwing the term out there and sort of slanted everything a lot of people who were working on metaverses are. So we'll sort of dig into all that. But usually we start off each episode, I dig into Ashlee a little and try to get her own little interpretation. So, like, what do you know? What would you say the metaverse is?
Okay, so this one is going to be difficult for me. So I originally thought that the metaverse was like a pair of goggles that you put on and you walk around in a fake world. And then I thought that it was only Facebook. But then, like, I thought there was only one metaverse. And then come to realize that there are multiple metaverses. So, yeah, I would just say that a metaverse is almost like a 3D, 4D video game that you, like, can live in. I don't know. Let's see. I'm sure I'll improve upon this.
We'll see. What would you say, Skeez? What's your definition of metaverse?
I mean, I actually laughed when I walked in the room because I said this isn't my forte when it comes to Web3 in general. But you're not far off. The metaverse is kind of an alternate reality, computer-based reality, where there's a lot more things than just like maybe walking around already. And so people are buying land in the metaverse. They're advertising in the metaverse. There's, and I say in the metaverse, but then for people who've never even seen, say, a sandbox or other platforms besides does Facebook even have a working metaverse? They do. Yeah. See, we haven't even
depends on how you define working, but
working. Yeah. Oh, right, because they have the Oculus, right? So it's not far off from what we even saw in the 90s and the early 2000s about like what would be, or even people think of Ready Player One and some of the other kind of sci-fi books and movies that had elements of the metaverse. But there is already advertising. There's concerts going on. There's full on. In Detroit, we've done meetings in the quote-unquote metaverse where if you're anywhere in the world, you can all meet up in what would be defined as the metaverse. And so it's not really the technical definition of it, but maybe more of an everyday definition of, a virtual world where many things can happen, from horse racing.
Yeah.
Nate and I got horses we race in the metaverse.
That's right.
And so from there we can branch way out to some of the benefits or maybe the drawbacks of, participating in the metaverse. So,
yep, I think the only place I would differ, I think both of those are strong, popular opinions of what the metaverse is. I don't think there is a textbook definition yet. We're trying to figure it out as we go along. It came about. And what was it, the 90s?
It was in a book
that
Nedick suggested to me, and I actually, I fully read it. It's a great book.
Shout out to Nedick. Rest in peace, brother. The
author coined the term,
But for me, why I get excited, I didn't really realize, I didn't know anything about the metaverse besides like the movies, and I've heard about the book, but I didn't really pay much attention until Decentraland, which is like the first active metaverse in the blockchain sphere, came out. This was like February when the pandemic hit, right? So they had just like launched, came out of beta. You could go in, and boy, I started seeing all the possibilities of what you could do. And it sort of drove my definition to be a little different, because I was the same thing as you guys. I was like, oh, it's like a video game thing. It's basically like Sims, but like with goggles.
Yeah.
Like, not my thing. I wasn't really into Sims or Second Life and all that. But I started to see the real possibilities, and over the years, that just expands out. I've been a big fan of XR, which is like augmented reality and virtual reality sort of mixed together. To me, the metaverse is exactly what you guys defined as one aspect, but also we're in an age now where you have digital assets, and NFTs are a big thing, which is why I wanted you on here, Skeez, because you're like, for those who don't know, Skeez is like my NFT person. That's where I get a lot of NFT
Way
information.
down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, she's his phone friend.
Yeah, but it's like once you combine like NFTs and augmented reality, it's not, I don't see many people going into this computer realm wearing VR goggles all the time. I see it as an opportunity for you to take your digital assets and use it in the real world, just like we did with social media. At first, it was everybody on the computer and chatting just online. Now it's a way to organize online, but it leads to all these real world interactions, right? It's not just happening on a computer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I barely text message with people anymore. We're communicating through social media, but communicating how we're going to meet and interact in real life. There's this bridge, marriage. So that's my sort of viewpoint of it all. But
I was going to say, can I pop in real
Yeah.
quick? Something that the artist who I work with, who is world famous, and this is the NFT project that I've been very involved in with Ron English, he started in the 80s co-opting billboards, right? So he went over billboards and did political commentary over them. And he said it was the best thing to get people driving down the street to see him. And it was like such easy advertising for him. He's also just really brilliant in his ideas of wanting to be an artist that moves forward and isn't just stuck in whatever he's done. Right. So he said when the internet came around, everybody, at that point, he was already a very famous graffiti artist. And there was a woman who was a journalist and wanted to get different graffiti artists in the city or in different cities and interview them. And everyone said, oh, once the internet comes around, we're all just going to be sitting at our computers and no one's going to interact and meet each other. And he said, here, this woman with a push of a button was able to find graffiti artists that had never been photographed, had never been even interviewed, because what the internet did was allowed us to find that little niche of whatever community we needed or we couldn't find, because before, you collected postage stamps, you had to send them to a magazine that would eventually post your things, and just the speed of it was so slow, right? So everybody thinks with the metaverse we're going to get stuck doing the same thing, sitting in front of our computer doing nothing. And in his mind, he's like, no, now I have access to my entire fan base like this because of blockchain. I can send them a digital art gift. I can have them come to my store, and we'll probably get into some of this later. I might be throwing out some terms that are, you said you're a reseller, so he can token gate his items where you can buy his physical in real life art pieces, but only if you're a member of his NFT fan club. Or, fan clubs back in the day were a huge thing. Like, we're both artists, and, you would fill out the postcard and send it in, and then you would get, VIP access to tickets for concerts and all that. And like, now that we can do that all on the blockchain is really a game changer, I think, for a lot of artists or just other advertising and brands. And brands are picking up on it.
Yeah.
As much as people want to say NFTs are dead, they wouldn't be if these big brands were. I mean, Jarritos, like my favorite Mexican soda, just did a huge NFT release. Well,
Reddit had like one of the most largest NFT releases, period, and nobody even knew they were buying NFTs.
Who was that?
Reddit.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that was it was like they kind of. There was no front running, no advertising, no nothing. It was a free mint. It was
just
a free mint
on Polygon, on an Ethereum chain.
Very little notice.
And Redditors notoriously hate NFTs.
Yeah, you did. They did, like you said, they didn't even know that they were buying NFTs.
They don't even know they were buying. They were all into it. And that's
like what they think it was.
Well, they just thought it was like a profile picture that they got to like own. They thought it was pretty cool. Oh, I got my own profile icon that sort of represents me, and I have control over it, and I can do things with it. That's pretty cool. Like and we're like, yeah, that's what we've been trying to tell you. But the speculation side of things really slants how things look. And then I think, not necessarily with the NFT pieces, but I think that similar thing happens with the metaverse. And with like when Mark Zuckerberg came out when Facebook and changed the name from Facebook being the parent company to Meta, and really put Metaverse in the sort of social psyche of this thing that's coming, it really slanted what the metaverse really is. Like we defined it. He comes out and he's like, basically it's Facebook but with goggles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's really crappy Facebook with goggles because, like, they have struggles even putting, like, legs on avatars and stuff.
Well, and that doesn't sell it to anybody, right? Because a lot of people are kind of anti-Facebook anyway.
Yeah.
Especially the generation that is using Roblox and, you know, what's the other game all the kids play? All my nieces and nephews that play. Anyway, look at us. I'm like, I don't have kids. So I don't know. You're the mom. What do your kids play?
He's 15 months.
Oh, okay. But kids aren't on Facebook like that. Right. You know, like even generations up to 20, 25. I mean, if you meet that generation, they're not on Facebook. So when you look at, you know, even the Facebook stock diving or them losing so much money by putting it into the metaverse, will they eventually gain some legs? See what I did there?
Yeah, I saw that. Good tie back.
Will they eventually get there because they have, you know, a depth of devs and really smart people behind that platform, right? Yeah. But right now, that's not the generation that's showing up to Facebook to even get involved in that, unlike a Decentraland or Sandbox or some of the other ones.
And I think even when you talk about brands, I think it's a deep misunderstanding, again, at least from my viewpoint, because there isn't, you know, my viewpoint doesn't run the world. But for what I see from the potential being in the metaverse and from what was originally spawned, I think we maybe can do a quick little jump back, right? Like when the metaverse first got mentioned and got brought up as a really dystopian thing. If you know, the thing most people went to is Ready Player One, the book and the movie. You know, and it seemed cool. Like, yeah, the technology piece was cool. I can go in and be my own avatar and play on these games and earn these. They really had NFTs before NFTs were a thing. They had all this stuff in here, but they were escaping like this global hell landscape of oppression and financial destitute. It was horrible. And, you know, that's not, I think that's what most people think of. And, you know, if we end up there, it's not a good thing. Like, I'm not geeking about that.
I mean,
metaverse.
In Ready Player One, he's like in the stacks, they call it, right? Where everyone's like a mobile home on top of each other. And even I went to grab my phone because I'm like, it's still, anyway, doesn't matter. The original book from the 90s. But it was the same concept. It was a horrible world, and they would get into the metaverse, and then he was a hero protagonist, and, you know, you could go fight the bad guys in some other faraway land, and that's how you escaped, right? Because your day-to-day was horrible. Yeah. And we're not saying that anywhere in the world is this perfect utopia now, but the painted picture in the movies and the books was definitely very, very different than what the world looks like today. But my thing is that how many people are really, like Nate said, using the NFTs or metaverse as a way to kind of globally, for instance, like we could have a global art showcase or an art exhibit or an art opening similar to an Art Basel or an art opening in LA where you show your digital art, but people from the entire world can come to it. Or maybe you're a sculpture artist and a sculpture just isn't feasible to ship to India or Asia, and you can give them a digital representation of that. Look at the shoe game, the way people collect shoes. A lot of people collect shoes and they just sit in a storage unit, or they sit in their basement until they have a resale value or whatever. Like, if you had a digital representation of that shoe, what does it matter? Nobody's wearing them in the real world anyway.
Right.
And you can put them on your avatar and you can do the things. It's like owning the Lamborghini, only people within your 10-mile radius of where you drive your Lamborghini sees it.
that.
Owning a Lamborghini in the metaverse or in a digital space allows the entire world to know that you were able to buy a Lamborghini from Lamborghini, and it's a flex. Yeah.
But even in the shoe game, so there's some developers, and this is why I always brought in the AR, the augmented reality. And for people who don't know augmented reality, virtual reality is when you put on goggles and you go in the realm. Augmented reality is when you put on goggles or you can look through your phone or something and you can see digital representations. A lot of that's in the maps now. If you use like a lot of the map apps that just come with your phone, you can look and it'll give you like information on it, even if just the street name is there or different.
Like a Pokemon Go situation.
Like a Pokemon Go situation. That's all one thing. And so some of the things you brought up, like the shoes. I know somebody who's working on, I saw somebody who was working on this thing for cars. So you take this design, you put what kind of car you have on it, you make your own sort of design thing, and then through augmented, you hold it up, you see that design on your actual car. So if you were thinking about getting it painted or putting it, you can actually like do a full 360 wraparound and just see how it is. So now imagine if you have these NFT sneakers, right? And you got these plain, like maybe some plain white Air Force Ones or something, but you have whatever design you want on them.
Chuck Taylors. Yeah.
But now you can put these specialized NFT designs, and if you're in the augmented thing and you're in the real world, I look down at your shoes through the augmented space, I'm seeing the NFT representation of the shoe. Yeah, that's cool. Not just this. So it's bringing your digital assets into the real world. You can do it with just your basic shirts.
But keeping them safe.
Keeping it safe.
It's almost like, and that's what we talk about in the art world, working with an artist whose art pieces are 30, 40, 50,000 for the first round, not the second and third sale of it. And how many people have seen the actual Da Vinci's or actual Mona Lisas? That's not what's out there, right? Like, it's back in storage in some very climate controlled storage, right? We don't get to see the actual thing anyway.
Right.
So when people go, well, I don't get it. Why would I want the digital representation? It's like, the real thing exists. We know it exists, but nobody gets to see it. Nobody gets to enjoy it. Nobody gets to have fun with it.
Right.
So when you bring it into the digital world, you go, now I can share it all the time. I could do an augmented reality thing. I could send the piece to Japan for a digital show, and it can be in a frame the same way the original art piece would be. So there's so many things that are just barely scratching the surface to how we can use the technology and the idea behind the metaverse, but into a day-to-day really brand activation. I mean, brands are going to go, and individual. Really, this has given a lot of individual artists, musicians, any type of artist. We were talking about film last night too. More control over their IP. Yeah. Right.
Yep. Another thing I see with the metaverse, point you brought up earlier, Ashlee, of I thought it was one thing versus a bunch. I really think that's going to be like some of the scope that we see with just blockchain debates in general. The big money debate is, should there be multiple monies? Is it Bitcoin only, or is it Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other, and people are going to have, I don't think most people want to deal with 30 different currencies when it comes to like layer ones, the computation layer of Ethereum, right? And being able to do apps. I don't think people want to build on a million different platforms. This is a problem that we have with the Mac, PC, Linux debate for decades as computing came around. Your people are going to settle on maybe a handful, maybe there might be one that rules the world, but it's going to be a small handful that are your primary go-to sources. Most every blockchain platform right now is, Skeez might remember me saying this in 21-ish, 2021, like altcoins don't mean alternate to Bitcoin anymore. That left in 2019, 2020. Altcoins mean alternative to Ethereum. Nobody's building an alternative to Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin's Bitcoin. You have a couple of variants that are the money thing. Some have privacy aspects. So you have other alternatives. But when people talk about altcoins or building something alt, They're making alternatives to Ethereum. And I say all this to bring back to like the metaverse. I think right now we're going through that same experimenting phase with the metaverse. Yeah, you have multiple platforms, but in my head, if it's all open source, if it's all permissionless, right, which is my whole driving force behind participating in any of this, then I can take a Decentraland or a Sandbox, and they're going to really be built off the same core framework. I personally see the vision that's catching on is when you have a Decentraland base, and you have Decentraland as it is today, but, you know, you come through with your own ideas, and you build your own sort of
suburb.
experience on it, right? So I'm not talking about like the actual land parcels, because there's a lot of debate around this too.
Right.
But imagine if you have a brand and you're in Sandbox, which is really more about gaming, right?
Yeah.
Sandbox experience is just really about gaming, building your own little games and having these micro game systems. And you build this up in your brand here, but the whole world isn't going to be interested in gaming. But if Sandbox is open, right, you take that same platform and you build a different portal to it. So I go to sandbox.com to see the gaming version, but I might go to workbox.com to see this whole different version. Same platform, but a different experience. And while you own property on one parcel in Sandbox, that's this gaming tower of experience, I own that same plot in this fork, but now this is more geared towards networking and business, right? And so you can, unlike what you can do now in the real world, right? You have one building. If you want to change the theme of the building, you got to tear down the building and build a whole new building.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine with one NFT, which is sort of your key way to all of this stuff, and with one platform that's spread out with multiple interfaces. Now think of the possibilities. Now you're really living, at least on the Ready Player One aspect, where they would jump from like game to game, but in one thing, it's like that same deal. Maybe I'm in this one party environment. Maybe I'm in this one networking environment. Maybe one's for movies. Maybe one's for music.
I was going to say, is this getting a little deep?
No.
We're still on the same.
Yeah, no, I really like everything that you guys are saying, because I'm starting from a base of like 0. So I don't know if you see me, I'm like feverishly writing notes over here because I'm like, wow, this is so cool. But does like, let's say for example, Sandbox, do they have works already where you can do the different like the niche things like the party or the work or the gaming? Like, does that exist already, or are you just kind of like an idea you're tossing around?
Yeah, for me, it's an idea you're tossing around. Sandbox is a little bit more centralized in their workflow.
Okay.
Right now, Decentraland, to my knowledge, is the most decentralized one, and that's even still has this high level of centralization around it. But I believe they're both open source, so theoretically, yes, I could just copy and paste. And then if, as a development team, we decide this is what we want with Sandbox, right? We can just copy and paste it, and then just change the interface. Maybe we don't like the blocky sort of virtual realm that Sandbox has. We like more high-res, high polygonal count thing. We could just build that. Yeah. But if we just do a true fork, right, the keys that hold all the land on one could theoretically still hold the land on the other. So you're not building a competition. You're just building a different experience. And if you've already interacted with a certain thing on one, you can interact the same way on another. But the experience is different.
Like levels, kind of, or like.
More of a fork would be more of like a side chain, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it will be a whole
different world.
A whole different world. But like when Ethereum forked, right? If you owned an NFT on, this was sort of an issue, right? When it comes to real things, if you own an NFT on the proof of work Ethereum, when it went to proof of stake, which is a whole hard fork, now you own 2 copies of the same NFT. One on the proof of work Ethereum, one on the proof of stake Ethereum.
Yeah.
Now, which one will the real artists in the network respect? That becomes something different. But that setup is set to have like friction, versus what we're talking about, like with the metaverse, would be set up to have, aligned incentive,
right?
Not to be competitive.
I think the word that jumps out to me that when we're talking about these different worlds or even forking, which hasn't really happened like that, is experience, right? Yeah. I'm a big user experience person, and I think the mass adoption or even larger adoption doesn't happen until it's fun, until it works, until it makes sense, until you go, oh wow, jumping into Decentraland and hanging out with my family on the other side of is more fun than being on FaceTime, right? Because right now we can just do a FaceTime group or a Zoom. You know, Zoom became a verb during the pandemic just because it was easy. And everyone could download it. Doesn't mean it was the only one out there. Google Meet. I mean, there's so many other ones, right? So at what point does the user experience become just easy for everybody? Same with NFTs, same with whatever marketplace you're buying an NFT from or any kind of digital asset. Everybody went to eBay because it was easier, but you know, StockX, people don't even necessarily love that right now because the user experience isn't the greatest. So I think we're at that stage, metaverse-wise, where there's the big three, kind of, and not even that. It's really just kind of Decentraland and Sandbox.
Yeah, because we're not going to count Facebook.
Well, and the other one is the what's the one that has my Miami? Because they had a horse race in it too.
Yeah, Zed was down there, but I think the bear market has pretty killed them. The only ones, I'm not saying they're dead, but the only ones that I think that have any kind of...
Because they were going to do car racing and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah.
It was like a virtual Miami, but they call it Miami.
Yeah.
It had its own coin and everything too, and people were buying land down there.
Yeah, there's a
It's
few.
all speculation, really, right now about which one's going to be the Google or which one's going to be the Amazon. And that comes down for me and, well, really for the whole metaverse world is user experience. How easy is it for us to connect? Can a regular $150 Dell computer connect versus a super souped up gaming computer?
Well,
can your phone connect?
That's actually what I was going to ask next is how does somebody even access it? Like, I've never been on like the metaverse or in the metaverse. I don't know what the proper terms are, but how would I go about, or like the average person watching, like how would we go about getting on or going inside?
I mean, with Facebook, it's the Oculus, right?
Okay.
That'll just get you there. With Decentraland, it is a little more of still a knowledge-based entrance. You have to have... Do you still have to have Decentraland coin? You have to get in...
No, you've never needed a coin.
The coin.
For
Only
any
if you
of
want
them.
to interact.
Yeah, for any of them. Only if you want to purchase.
Or
If you're
purchase
going
stuff,
to do...
right.
If you're going to do commerce, and the first commerce, as with every platform in the universe, the first commerce is only one of two things. You're either gambling or doing porn. And in Decentraland, the first commerce was gambling.
Or buying drugs.
Buying drugs.
Are you saying like in relation to the metaverse?
I'm saying like with the internet, mobile
Oh,
phone,
I see.
everything.
I see,
everything.
I see.
Anything digital, it's all pretty much it's porn or gambling that drives it all.
It goes back to BC, you know, right?
Yeah,
like why was money and anything monetary even invented?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. But yeah, you
You can
don't
just go
need
to
the money.
Decentraland. Is it .org? What is the Decentraland?
Decentraland.org.
And create your avatar and just start jumping in.
Yep.
with it. And honestly, I've tried it on an older Mac laptop and it's okay. It's not very fast.
But now they have local clients. So like Sandbox, both of those, you can just download it. So you don't have to. You can do a web-based experience. If you don't want to like download all the apps, but you can just download them now, which will make it run a little smoother.
Right.
So this isn't like a wear goggles thing.
No, you're actually.
No, it's 2D.
Yeah, 2D.
But they have like Decentraland. I think sometime between now and the end of Q1 next year, 2023, they've been working on the integration so you can do the virtual world part. You can wear the goggles and actually be immersed into it if you want to.
Have any of y'all ever played like the virtual the goggle PlayStation anything?
Yeah. I go to like they got the VR arcades and stuff out here.
Incredible.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different.
Like, I'll be honest, if Metaverse was more like that, I mean, I've played the Batman one. There was my friend had the day my friend got a pair, went over to his house, and it was just like, now you got to try this one, and you're riding a roller coaster and shooting at clowns in a creepy creepy forest.
Yeah.
And the roller coaster feels like a roller coaster, and it is so realistic. The Batman one, you're standing over Gotham City on the edge of a cliff, and I mean, and then there's sports, there's golfing, there's bowling, there's everything, and so I, like you, am like, well, if that was the metaverse, that could
Well, that
be
is
fun.
the metaverse, though.
But it hasn't gotten
it's a
to
version
that.
of
We're
That is
really-
the metaverse. That is a version
We're really
of it.
close. Yeah, it's again, just one version, but then they even have now the haptic response stuff.
Right.
So you might wear the gloves, but the gloves, it's like when you go to grab an orange or you grab a bottle, just like with your phone, right? You click on a button and it gives you that little vibrate to make you feel like you actually touch something. So it's the same thing. You have this, you grab something and the gloves act like this resistance. So you feel like you're actually holding it. As you can do this whole, if on the virtual world experience, yes, it's great. And there's not a big difference between what we're talking about for the experience and what we're talking about for like what Facebook's trying to make or what Roblox could be. To me, the big difference is it's not about the experience. It's about control. And this is why I get excited about the decentralized metaverses. And always put quotes around decentralized as we talk about stuff now. But the more decentralized they get, because at the end of the day, no matter how advanced and cool it is to go into Zuckerberg's metaverse, it's Zuckerberg's metaverse, and you pay Zuckerberg for access. He controls what happens next. He controls how you interact. He controls all of that. And the big piece, he is.
I mean, look what Elon's done to Twitter. He's becoming the dictator over there.
Well, yeah, you just swap sides. It's like a dictator for one for a dictator the other. The point of doing any of this stuff, if you're a blockchain or crypto purist, is about who has control and say. And the idea is if we're going to have this metaverse, whether it's all immersive or whether it's, augmented, who controls that? And part of the Web3 movement or Web5 movement, if you're a Bitcoiner, it's really the same thing. And where NFTs play a strong role in all this stuff is the users. The people who have equity into it, who are the user base, who actually use it, are the ones who get to have control into it, right? That you have these things called DAOs. I don't think we've ever dived deep into them, but a DAO is just a way for a collective of people, right, to organize together and have things happen.
Is it decentralized autonomous ownership?
No, organization.
Organization.
Yep. Now, they've gotten rid of a lot of the autonomous. I would love to see more autonomous get put back into how DAOs work these days, which just means the smart contract, the platform. It's already pre-decided. So, like, if you have a treasury, right? If you're in the metaverse and we're participants in the metaverse and we're using, again, like, let's say sand, and you have your sand bucks or your land tokens for the land. And this is how both of them work, right? If you own land in one of these metaverses, you get sort of a say, like, do we expand the land? Do we make more land? Or do we keep it limited and drive the value up? And there's going to be, if you believe in open market dynamics, eventually it's going to be in their interest to vote to have more land, because the land prices will get so high because of its scarcity. Right. It's digital scarcity. It will drive away people to newer platforms where there's more opportunity. So it would be in their interest to allow new land, and you find this balance, right?
Because that's what a lot of people say right away when you say, well, you can buy land in the metaverse. Well, what would stop them from just making as much land until forever?
Economics, right?
And it comes down to that.
Yep, and you find that balance. But then but that's the thing. With the difference between a sandbox even or Decentraland, the decentralized, quote-unquote, ones, and Facebook, which there's no hope of decentralization there, who makes that decision? Yeah. If you're a landowner, you make those decisions. You have a vote. The more land you have, the more votes you say.
Is there a metaverse that runs on a DAO like that?
Decentraland.
Does it?
Yep.
So if you own land right now in Decentraland, you are part of a DAO that would make a decision like that?
Yep. There you have...
Where's the DAO? Is it a Discord DAO, I'm assuming, or a Decentraland Discord?
No, Discord is Decentraland. It's on Decentraland. You go to Decentraland, you go to the thing. Now, the communication channel, of course, most people use Discord. Okay. But, there shouldn't be a Discord DAO, because Discord, again, is another centralized thing. Yeah. But you have to communicate. And so it's where the community as a whole decides
like they have their own message board, or
there's not like
it's easier to use
I'm asking because I genuinely don't know. I've jumped into Decentraland with Nate a few times, but I haven't.
If you own Mana, if you own Mana, which is like the Decentraland token,
currency,
it's the currency. You can stake that, and for staking that, you get a vote in your DAO. And then if you buy land, you get, I forgot what they call their land. In Sandbox, it's actually just called land. But if you own a parcel of land in Decentraland, you get you have another token because the land is just an NFT. These are all NFTs. Which is why I asked you to sort of like be here for this conversation, even though you're not a metaverse person. It's all driven from NFTs.
Right.
Right.
Have you guys had an episode on NFTs?
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Nope. But we'll link to it when we have it.
Well, I mean,
from here.
it's a valid point to bring up because then does the concept of NFTs make sense for you?
A little bit. I mean, it's making more, as I'm like hearing you guys talk about it, it's kind of making more sense. But I have a very like basic like knowledge and understanding of it.
Sure.
Well, besides art, go ahead and tell us, Skeez, like, what is an NFT?
Yeah, I'm not really that great at even describing. So Nate, I will definitely pass it a little over to you. Mm-hmm. I'm better at the understanding the mechanics behind it and the use, the use of it. But so it's a non-fungible token. We all know that, right? Mm-hmm. But the idea of fungible, you have explained to me with many slides, and I should understand it, but I'm not the best at describing the economics behind it. Because there's an economic.
There is, but that's like a key point.
This is a horrible answer for somebody that he's like, she's our NFT specialist. I'm like, I can buy them, sell them, market them. I can I can mint your NFTs. The idea of having your house deeds as an NFT on the blockchain instead of sitting in a central city office is like incredible to me. The power of it's incredible to me. But when it comes down to the very, very basics of a non-fungible, I mean, because money. So money, the concept of money. Have you guys had this pot?
Yep.
I gotta dip back and listen to some of your other ones because Nate is great at that. And then we all started reading the 5,000 Years of Money, 5,000 Years of Debt.
Yeah,
it's like a 1,500 page book.
Oh yeah. It's like makes War and Peace look like a toilet reader.
Hilarious. It's definitely available on audiobooks, and I just sometimes pop it on if you got an hour here, hour there, you're on a long road trip, and you can really only do small chunks. Small chunks. But it is mind-blowing. It is definitely, if you're in this space, it is something to just kind of check off in the corner to have if you want to dip back. Almost a textbook-like, and that's what Nate said. He's like, you don't have to finish the whole thing, but dip back into it. So,
or just listen to our podcast episode on money.
Perfect.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm definitely like passing that off to you, the idea.
Well, so like an NFT, right? On the most technical aspect is just a set of data. Okay. That's all it is. Art is the breakthrough use case for NFTs, as we now see from years of NFTs sort of blowing up. Some kind of art. But what is it? So you have a lot of people who are like, oh, you can just right click and save, right? I can just now I got your NFT.
Well,
it's like,
the
no,
certificate of authenticity.
It's the certificate of authenticity.
The signature
that
on the blockchain.
That's all it is. It's this metadata that says for here. So in a Decentraland or a sandbox or any kind of metaverse, the land is NFTs because it's saying on this platform, if you go to plot number 17, negative 32, just sort of some coordinates. Mm-hmm. If you go here, this little plot, this is the metadata tied to this. And if I buy that, it's saying I own the keys to that. I'm the only one who can build on top of that plot. And if I own several plots next to each other, I can build a bigger thing on top of that.
Yeah. And the use case for that reminds me of when Snoop Dogg or somebody famous buys a piece of land. He bought a piece in
like
Sandbox.
A stake, like this huge thing.
Yeah, he bought a stake. And now as a regular, everyday Joe, you can be Snoop Dogg's neighbor. You go say that on your socials or you go flex it, and somebody was like, I could just right click save and be Snoop Dogg's neighbor too. And it's like, well, are you? Can you? Yeah. Can you prove that? Can you show that authenticity, right? Yeah. Maybe I was going a little deeper with the fungible part because
you are. That's like what an NFT is, right? It's unique, right? So fungible, a dollar is fungible. If you have a dollar bill, I got a dollar bill. We don't really care about the serial number on it. We can swap them, and I can still have $1 worth of purchasing power. Mm-hmm. If you got one Bitcoin and I got one Bitcoin, we can swap them. We still have one Bitcoin worth of purchasing power. Mm-hmm. That's fungible. If I have a Mona Lisa and if I have like a Da Vinci and you have Rembrandt, we can't swap them and have equal purchasing power.
Warhol, and I have a Warhol.
Oh, see. But, so would you trade your Warhol for my son's fifth grade
This
art
is where it all
showpiece?
becomes non-fungible.
Non-fungible.
Right.
There's not a exchange in value of that. And so same thing with the land, right?
Well,
If you're
there's an
on
exchange
Snoop
of value,
Dogg,
but not a direct, not a equal.
well,
right?
it's not an equal thing. If you
Right.
if Snoop Dogg owns a piece of an estate of land in Sandbox, I can own an estate of land. We can build the exact same thing, right? People aren't coming to my plots of land the way they're going to come to him. They're not equal. They don't have the same value. I can do the same thing, doesn't make it the same value, and that's the non-fungible
And
part.
that's kind of the under layer that I was looking for that Nate always explains way better than I do. But that certificate of authenticity has always been important, and people have been faking them for years, right? Or losing them. Think about when, Hurricane Katrina, this to me is like another very important use case for NFTs. Think of Hurricane Katrina or any hurricane, right? I had friends at New Orleans is a second home to me, and I had friends that not only lived there, but then worked for FEMA after Hurricane Katrina. We even deal with this sometimes in Detroit, where they go, okay, well, who has the deed? Well, it's literally gone.
Right.
And then FEMA's like, well, then you got to go down to the city building and find your deed. And it's old technology, or even if it's on microfiche or it's in a warehouse somewhere, whatever.
Microfiche.
Well, I mean, that's literally what my friend in New Orleans had to do. They had to go to libraries that didn't flood to find these documents, and 9 times out of 10, no one could find the document. So then people come in and scoop land and say, oh, well, I had it. Look at my deed. Or they fake it. There's so many ways to fake things. They're talking about using NFT technology to give back land in Cuba to people that owned it before Fidel or, any governments take land away, to be like, no, it's on the blockchain. Like, you can't just go in there and fake that in a way that would take things that are of a lot of value to people. Even, for use case scenario now, you go, well, in 10 years, is that really going to happen? In 100, your kids.
Yeah.
But that drives the point.
Years,
yeah.
Well, who knows, right? I mean, yeah, most people in a crashing economy don't see their economy crashing until it's pretty much on fire and hitting the ground. But yeah, those are all the points why, again, I think a metaverse, and when we talk about metaverse, the concept that crypto builders have been building is way more fundamental for me to make sure people understand that concept versus even to say it bothers me. Like, you talked about brands earlier and like, well, Sandbox is the metaverse. We're going to put that. That's not a metaverse. That's a video game.
Well,
that's a controlled entity ran by a corporation. This is why, like, some people know if you're into the Ethereum space and you've learned some of the lore behind Ethereum and Vitalik Buterin even wanting to do this at all was because he was a big World of Warcraft player.
Minecraft was the kid game too. I couldn't think of.
Minecraft, right.
It came to me way later.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft. You spend all your time playing this game to get these special artifacts, and then one day, some asshole at World of Warcraft woke up and was like, you know what? Fuck that artifact. We're resetting everything. And one of those artifacts was like Vitalik's, and he was pissed. Like, I spent all this time. Why shouldn't this be mine? Why do you get to just take something I worked so hard to get away? And some people might look at, oh, it's just a video game, calm down, and maybe. But still,
people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on even NBA 2K, like building their teams and building their players and having certain uniforms. And there's, I just found this out at another friend's podcast. There's player leveling up farming.
Yeah.
Where there's kids that'll level up your team and you just send them a little cash app or whatever after they get your guy. There's so much money out here in these games, and they could take it all away. They could set you all back. They could set you all back to zero.
Even beyond money, people invest their time, which
time is money. Absolutely,
time is money. It's proof of work, right?
And I'm not going to that's what I was going to circle it back to. It's the proof of work. So.
And P2E, I'm not the biggest fan of P2E. I mean, you could see with. Axie Infinity and some of the play to earn.
Okay, just double checking.
No, that's great. That's great. So play to earn type games kind of feels like, that feels very Matrix to me. People all sitting in a tower just playing a game, trying to earn a few dollars here and there.
It's Black Mirror all the way.
It's totally Black Mirror. So there's a little bit of that you can kind of get into that realm as well with Metaverse and NFTs and gaming in general. But again, that's such a small subset of it. The idea that there is a monetary investment that people are already making in a digital space that's been going on for a long time. How can that be, like you said, decentralized? How can that be more about myself earning for my time or for my brand or for my IP?
Yeah, Activision will always want to make money, and that's fine, right? The question is, how can you align Activision's incentives and the players' incentives even more? There's been big conspiracies this past couple months with a video game conference. And, we bring up video games because that's part of where Metaverse stuff falls into, right? Where you have these players who make these games popular and they're on Twitch and they're streaming and they do all these and
they're making 20 cents per million views.
Well, no, they do this. They want to do these tournaments, but then one company contracts with the gaming company for the game you're playing, right? And they're like, well, no. We have the license, so we're the only ones that can officially throw a tournament. But none of the players who built up the reputation were behind this tournament. They had their own thing going. And the game company messed up because they're like, they didn't say you can't throw it, but they were like, well, you need a license, and we only have one license with them. And so now this huge tournament was like disbanded like 3 days or something before it was supposed to go. And, all the players boycotted the other tournament that properly licensed it because they're like, I'm not playing with that's some bullshit. We built your game up.
E-gaming's broadcast on ESPN at this point, right?
Right. So how do you align those incentives?
Advertising money. I mean, even in these games, they're advertising to you the entire time, and these companies are making a lot.
So companies can make money because they're the ones spending the money and the time developing the core games. But like anything in an economy, right, just because you built the core doesn't mean you're the sole benefactor all the way up, because you're not buying your own game. We used to say this in the music business stuff all the time. Artists would come through, like, oh man, they talk about how well they're gonna do. It's like, dog, like, oh well, I don't like this, I don't like that. It's like, how many of your record are you gonna buy? Yeah. I'm producing somebody and they're telling me what they don't like. It's like, you pay me for my opinion, because my opinion is the popular one. Yeah. That's why you've paid me for it. Mm-hmm. You're going to tell I don't like this. Like, cool. Like, you should like what your work is, but at the same token, how many of your record are you going to buy? I'm telling you, if you want to sell records, you need to sort of do this, right? And this has always happened, like in music. It's like, no, I like the song. We just need to speed it up a little bit. Yeah. That'll give it a different vibe. That will make it sell. That'll make radio play it.
As a DJ, we know what BPM people dance to.
Right. As a DJ, DJs make good producers, right? I witness what can make your record better. That's what I get paid to do, make your record better. Right. Yeah. And it's the same thing. Like, all right, make your video games, make your decentralized world, if you're not Facebook, because, screw them. But if you're another company, you want to build a portal for a metaverse, fine, I'm with that. But you got to also realize you're not the one who's going to be using your metaverse. You have to align incentives, and making it where the users have choice and users have everything are the way to sort of do that.
Well, to me, that is the underlying actually, I would say more the overlying topic of Web3 or Web 3. Even people are already calling it 3.5, is that in Web 2, users had no interaction with brands whatsoever. You get an email account, that is your email. You go to buy something, you could buy it, that's it. But now with Web3, you can see who all your users are as a brand, and you can start to shape, as a brand, and we're kind of talking about really big brands, right? Like Facebook and Amazon and whatever. I'm working with an artist whose team is literally his family. It's his wife and his son. And his buddy down the street who does his graphic design. I'm talking about a guy like him being able to ask his brand, his fans, how to shape his next movie, his next book, his next art. I mean, anything he wants to do, we see what they buy. We see who comes back and buys what, and there's more of an interaction in that way that never happened with Web 2.
Right.
Never happened. You didn't see what sold for his NFTs. He also works with a brand called Vivi who does a lot of AR, and Vivi's really cool, and David Yu's like very good friends with him and talks about ways to even make a virtual jukebox where you buy his band's 45s and then you put them in your jukebox, you can play them. I mean, really fun, interesting A&R stuff. And so from a smaller standpoint, that, and I said it before, that interaction with your fans, but also your fans and your consumers helping you shape your brand in a way that never was done before, because it was always one-sided.
Right. Yeah. And because it's open source and permissionless, they have the same access that, Atlantic Records or Amazon or any of them have. They're not. Yeah. It's much harder if you build a truly open thing that's permissionless. The walled garden that keeps people out goes away.
Oh, the amount of access for even, again, we've talked about shoes, art, music, for you to be able to own say a Ron English, you might not have ever had access to own an original of his because maybe that price point, or just because big museums or big collectors are going to come in and scoop it or raise the price at a Sotheby's or a Christie's or whatever, which, by the way, all those big companies are very into NFTs and have huge side projects with them. They're all down at Art Basel. They're all looking into this. So where you might not have physically been able to go to New York or send your super fancy representative to go bid for you, you're now able to do that online. You're now able to own originals of artists that, or shoe that you maybe never had access to, or, we were talking about cars and different things too. And so that power is also, I think, a way to spread wealth eventually, or to even spread consumerism in a way that wasn't also able to have been done in Web 2.
Right.
That's so interesting. So because I kind of came into this thinking that Metaverse was essentially a game, which I guess it kind of is, but at the same time now I'm kind of thinking like it's way more than that, because it can be an experience or entertainment, it can be advertising, it can be many, many, many things. And it's kind of cool that it connects all of the NFT stuff into it also.
Yeah, my favorite phrase about what the metaverse is, I can't remember who I stole this from, so shouts out to whoever I stole this from. But it's that we already live in the metaverse. It's not new. We live in the metaverse all the time. Every time you walk around, people are looking down on their phone. They're in the metaverse. Yeah. It's just right now it's 2D.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is how do we make it more interactive in 3D. Yeah. It's what we do now. So yeah, gaming, yeah, social media, yeah, brand experience.
Commerce, like you said.
Yeah, everything. Pop-ups. I used to love when you were talking about fan clubs, and you would do you could do pop-up concerts. Yeah, I mean, if you had a big enough sort of fan base, you can be like, you'd have your network of fan base, and you'd just be like, we're doing a concert here, don't tell anybody.
My first
and only true fans show up.
Was a DMX pop-up concert.
Stop.
I swear. Yeah. I was so sad.
That's amazing.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Wow, that's a great...
His birthday, too.
Wow.
For real? Oh
He's hanging out with us right now.
Wow.
Ron did something similar in Austin at South by Southwest. He had a double-decker bus, and they were playing music up top. His band, he has a band called the Rabbits with 3 Bs. And I know I've put a lot
shameless
of
plug.
I've put a lot of shameless plug, but honestly, it's just to give you guys an experience of an artist that's really using this.
It.
So at South by, and this is way pre-Web 3, but you could go scan a QR code on a couple posters that they put around South by Southwest, and it would give you a bus stop and a time, and the double-decker bus would show up, and they'd have his band playing up top, or it was a DJ, and he's like, Steve Aoki. You're like, of course it was, or whatever, because he just has famous friends like that. And you would get on the bus, and then it would eventually end at the party. But the only way you could get in the party is if you ended up on the bus, and you had to scan a QR. So that QR code is still
a major thing
old
with it.
technology. Yeah. But he was doing something like that at South by Southwest, which you could do that. We talk. There's also this like proof of participation, little POAP things and NFTs where you say, oh, if I went to all these different events at a Metaverse, then I could make it to a Blondish concert, a rave or whatever, somewhere in this location only if I did. And that's an element of geocaching. Mm-hmm. So when you say games, it's like we already do games kind of all day long, and even in all the algorithmic things you have to do. But like Nate said, we're all staring at our phones, and then people go, oh my God, I could never live in the Metaverse, or oh, that sounds so boring, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep, we're definitely there. And it's just, to me, at the end of the day, who owns it and who gets to control it. But I think that's a fairly
this has been very
wide summary of it all.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's very eye-opening for me, and the endless possibilities are like just so cool to even like think about right now.
And that's the key point. If I ever have to bring the message out to anybody, is everything we've even named is the low-hanging fruit of what could be.
Yeah.
Like, we're still working on making that happen. When you're a creative, if you're a true creative entrepreneur, whatever, the possibilities you can do. The one other aspect that we didn't really hit on, you were talking sort of like with sculpturing, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a sculptor, if you're an artist like that, or if you're an architect, you have to follow real-world physics in the real world for things to work. Fun. You don't have to do that in a virtual realm. Physics is not a constraint. Mm-hmm. So you can build these experiences. Yeah. And then, again, like you said, you can go to a museum and experience this thing because it's using, we've seen what hologram technology could do. Mm-hmm. Right? So you could do the same thing with your sculpture that you built physics-free inside of the Metaverse as a 3D piece, and you can go to a real museum and interact with it.
Think about roller coasters with no physics.
Oh wow!
Just where your fans blowing in your face and a rocking chair,
5D and the haptics and things.
It's crazy. So I encourage everybody to go play with something. Decentraland right now is my favorite one, so I would go to Decentraland. Of course, like every episode, you can always go to theblockument.com. You'll find this episode. We always have links, direct links to resources, so you'll have links to some of the different things we were talking about today. Some of which, real quick, I know we only got a couple minutes left, but Skeez, tell me about like a couple of the projects you're working on, how people find out more information about those. Yeah,
so I work with Like Cult Crypto is Ron English's Genesis PFP project. That's a word soup, but profile picture is just a PFP. Made mostly famous in the news for Bored Apes and different projects like that, CloneX, and certain companies like Nike is really involved in it. And so it's his IP. I helped put it out with One Time Run. They're a 12-year shipping just giant in the art world. So print shipping, sculpture, toy, based out of Detroit. So they recruited me to be a community manager with Ron English. And so I am that in between his fans and him. So like Cult Crypto, we also then expanded into a secondary collection called Area 54. That was a tie-in with Crocs and Foot Locker. So I have worked with some bigger brands, and that becomes a whole IP lawyer type thing, and when you can say things and post things. So I'm on the Twitter at Like Cult Crypto. You can follow my personal Twitter at DJ Skeez 313. And because of that community work that I've done, I also worked with Hygienic Dress League, who are big sculptor artists here in Detroit. Sculptor and like interactive, they do a lot of interactive installations. So if you ever saw the pigeons that were all downtown Detroit, that like the pigeon is one of their it's their logo. So they've done things that are interactive and sculpture, but you can't actually like own, they've never really done many prints, or you can't actually own a piece of their logo or a piece of their sculpture. So they're working with, the actual like government to try to get their NFTs to be, and it's so interesting to talk to Steve, but they want to file it to be
like a registered security.
Registered security, so that when you own a section of their sculpture, you can then sell it and get profit as like the sculpture gets sold as a whole piece. You own a chunk of it. So that's really interesting. And I worked with them on their launch, and they're still waiting for shares and stuff to be approved, and they're spending a lot of time on that. And so because of that, I've just slowly worked with different NFT projects. My big thing is really trying to get artists in Detroit, whether you're a print, sculpture, digital, or music artist, you know, earning and working in this space in a way that other communities or, you know, other cities are kind of already pushing.
Right.
And so I'm down at Spotlight. I DJ there every Saturday. We'll be having an event coming up, and One Time Run is right there as well, and they have a whole marketplace on Near Network. So we were talking about different networks and kind of being agnostic in that way. And so they're selling if you buy a print, you then get the NFT on their Near marketplace. So I got my feet in quite a few different things. It's literally my full-time job outside of DJing and rehabbing my community and working in housing and affordable housing in Detroit as well. So
Skeez does it all.
Yeah.
And racing go-karts and
no big deal.
working with boxing gyms and doing lots of other stuff. So
that's right.
But yeah, I would just say Twitter, Instagram at DJ Skeez 313. And if you have any questions about NFTs or, you know, how to even just buy one, something basic, or how do I safely mint a free one? And we talk a lot about wallet safety and all that kind of stuff too. And Nate is a big part of that. So
yeah.
And thank you for having me. Thank you.
No. Thank you for coming
through. It's been awesome to be here.
Again, go to theblocument.com. We'll have links to some of Skeez's contacts, so you can reach out. You definitely should. Yes. And you can also find us. We're on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all of them at The Blocument. I'm only on Twitter, but
I'm
drop
on Mastodon now too at Skeez.
Yeah, see, now you said that, Twitter's going to ban all of our links to it.
Probably, but
I won't include that part.
Right. So follow us, check us out, and remember, every time, come for the riches, stay for the revolution.
Like it.
Deep. All right.